At the end of this module, you should be able to import numeric data stored in CSV and TXT files. MATLAB can import many types of data files using a variety of built-in functions. In this class, we will focus on CSV and TXT files. Data in these files can be stored in rows and columns using delimiters to separate one value from the next. In a CSV file, the values must be separated by commas. In a TXT file, the values can be separated by spaces, tabs, commas, or semicolons. To import comma-separated data that is saved in CSV format, you will use the CSV read command. To import delimited data that is saved in TXT format, you will use the load command. Before you can load any data file into MATLAB, you need to set MATLAB's current folder to the location where the data file is saved. Here you see MATLAB's default layout. Notice that you can see the contents of the current folder here. If the data you want to load are not in this window, you will need to change the folder. You see the breadcrumbs for the folder that is set to the current folder in this bar at the top of the window. If the current folder is not set to the correct location, click the button directly to the left of the current folder field, and from there, browse to the correct folder. First, let's learn to load data using the load command. The basic format of the load command is shown here. We use the load command to load text files. Notice that the file name appears in quotation marks. The file name, including the extension, must be surrounded by matching quotes. You can use either single quotes, which MATLAB defines as a character array, or you can use double quotes, which MATLAB defines as a string array. The load command can only load numeric data, but many data files contain text along with the numeric values. The file might contain general information about the data. There are usually column headers to describe the data for each column. This example text data file contains the amount of volatile organic compounds, or VOC, produced per vehicle at Subaru of Indiana from 1999 to 2012. It contains both information about the data and column headers, along with numeric data. The load command cannot process this text, so you must hide it from MATLAB before attempting to import into MATLAB. So how do we get MATLAB to ignore the information? We use the %, just like we do for MATLAB comments. Note you can also delete the text from the data file, leaving only numeric values. This is required if you have columns of text data. Now let's demonstrate the load command in MATLAB. In this example, we will import into MATLAB the Subaru VOC data from the text file voc_emissions.txt. To import these data directly into MATLAB, I'll type the command load, open parentheses, single quotes, the file name with extension, single quotes, close parentheses. Oh, I get an error. This error is telling me that I am in the wrong folder. I will use the file icon to browse for the correct folder. Okay, so now I'm in the correct folder. I will run my load command again. An error still occurs. This is because the file contains uncommented text in the header rows. We need MATLAB to ignore the information in the header rows in the data file. To do this, we can open the file in a text editor, comment out the header text, and resave the file with a new name. Alright, now I'll repeat the load command using the new file name. Nothing outputs to the command window, but we can now see our data in the workspace. Notice that the data variable has the same name as the file name without the extension. Another nice way to load data is right into a variable name that we want to use. I will assign the variable name Subaru_VOC as we load the data. We now see the output on the screen and the variable we created in the workspace. A third option is to assign the data file name as a character or string variable, then load the data using the variable name. Now let's learn to load data using the CSV read command. The basic form of the CSV read command is shown here. We use this command to load comma-delimited files. Just like we did with the load command, we must place the file name, including the extension, within matching quotation marks. CSV read can only import numeric data. CSV files can have header information, just like the TXT files. This CSV file contains annual production of vehicles by Subaru of Indiana from 1999 to 2012. We could delete the header rows, but we would rather preserve the information if we can. CSV read provides us with an option that is not available with the load command. We can specify the row and column of the starting point of the numeric data in the file. In this example, there are 5 rows of header information, and the numeric data start in the 6th row, first column. However, MATLAB starts counting at 0, so it reads cell A1 as position 00. We want MATLAB to read all the data starting at cell A6, which MATLAB interprets as row 5, column 0. From that entry, MATLAB can read all remaining rows and all remaining columns in the dataset. Using the CSV read command, we enter the file name with its matching quotes, followed by a comma, then the row assignment, followed by a comma, and finally the column assignment. Now let's demonstrate the CSV read command in MATLAB. In this example, we will import into MATLAB the Subaru annual production data from the file annual_production.csv. To import these data directly into MATLAB, I'll type the command CSV read, open parentheses, double quotes, the name of the file, double quotes, close parentheses. Another error occurred. This one is because the text file contains text in the header rows. We need MATLAB to ignore the header rows in the data file. Let's add the row and column assignments where the numeric data start in the command by adding the 5 and 0. Remember that MATLAB starts counting at 0, so the 6th row of data is row 5, and the first column of data is column 0. Hit Enter, and now we see the data in the workspace and in the command window. Unlike the load command, CSV read does not assign the data to a variable named with the file name. See that if I call for a variable named annual_production, MATLAB tells me it does not exist. If we want to be able to call the variable later, we must assign the data to a variable when we load it. Here I have called the variable production_data, and you can see that now this variable name appears in the workspace. In summary, we learned that MATLAB won't import data files unless the files are stored in the current folder. There are two commands to import data, load and CSV read, which can only import numeric data. Text or TXT files are loaded into MATLAB using the load command. If these files contain non-numeric characters such as headers or other text, you can manage this by adding the % signs at the beginning of each row or deleting the text and saving this with a new file name. When using this command, place the file name with the extension within matching quotes. Comma delimited or CSV files are loaded using the CSV read command. If these files contain non-numeric text, such as headers, you can ignore text rows by assigning the starting point of the numeric data, remembering that MATLAB starts counting from 0. And like the load command, place the file name with the extension within matching quotes.